I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to give you 5 of my fantasy takeaways from week 11 of the fantasy football season. Definitely an interesting week of games. I felt like we had some big performances once again, but we also had some big-time players lay some eggs. Some guys that normally you can count on to produce big didn't do very well, like Lamar Jackson. Just had an awful game. Just didn't expect that coming, even though he had a tough matchup against the Browns. But it happens. It's fantasy football. Hopefully you came out on the winning side of things for this week. And here are 5 of my fantasy takeaways from this week. My first one is, never thought I'd be saying this, but I think Jacoby Brissett is a legit must start for fantasy teams right now. He broke an NFL record in his game this week, completed 47 passes. And the amazing thing is he missed on just 10 passes in that game. He threw the ball 57 times. He was 47 of 57. He has at least 23 plus fantasy points all 5 of his starts this year. The numbers don't lie. He's getting it done on a weekly basis, multiple touchdowns every game. And he did this huge game this past week without Marvin Harrison, his top receiver. So it was even more impressive, in my opinion. Jacoby Brissett, a must start for fantasy teams. My next takeaway is another QB, and it's Sam Darnold is starting to look like Sam Darnold again. 4 interception game in this huge game against the Rams this week. It was a big division rival game for first place, and Darnold didn't play very well. Didn't score a touchdown. He has fewer than 13 fantasy points 3 or 4 games. He has interceptions 4 straight games. He just doesn't come up big in the big game just yet. Maybe he can turn it around before the season is over with, but he had a great start to the year. His numbers are starting to fade a little bit. He's not like Jacoby Brissett. He's not a must start for fantasy teams. He's more of a spot play, in my opinion, and I'm just not sure I'd use Darnold at this point. I still think he's a positive for that offense, though. Jackson Smith-Njigba still getting it done, posting some huge numbers, has a great report. Darnold, but as for Darnold from a fantasy perspective, I don't like him right now. My next takeaway is George Kittle could end up being a league winner this season. I know he's had some injury issues this year, but the return of Brock Purdy is just a huge plus for Kittle. It showed this week. He scored 24.7 fantasy points in their game this week, and that is a season high for Kittle. He has a great rapport with Purdy. He also has been playing better overall. He has touchdowns 3 or 4 games, but the rapport with Purdy is what has me excited for the rest of the year. I think he could have a huge finish to the season. It could end up being one of those league winners this year. My next takeaway for this week is defenses don't stay the same all year. I know it's not shocking, but things move up and down throughout the season, and I think the Steelers and Falcons defenses are 2 of those prime examples. They're 2 teams in the opposite going in the opposite directions on that side of the ball. Pittsburgh was a mess earlier this year, but they've really turned it around lately. They're playing a lot better, even with a lot of injuries in the secondary. They're becoming a fantasy factor again. They had 18 fantasy points this week. They had 17 in week 9. They're getting it done. So I would not get worried about their numbers from earlier in the year. It's going to take time for them to get those evened out, but they're playing well right now, and they definitely have fantasy value. The Falcons now, they're the other side of the things. They have really gone off a cliff in recent weeks. They've allowed 485 plus yards 2 straight games. They're absolutely getting torched. They did it this week against the Panthers offense. It's not exactly very good. The Falcons were great against the pass earlier this year, but that really struggled in that area in recent weeks, especially this week against Carolina. So their defense that I think is going on the opposite side of things. Their numbers still look pretty good overall, but they're starting to trend the wrong way. So just keep an eye on these trends throughout the season. And remember, things don't stay the same all year for a lot of these fantasy defenses. My last takeaway for this week is I think Jameson Williams, much like George Kittle, set up for a big finish, and he's going to have a breakout season building on last year. And the big reason for this, in my opinion, is Dan Campbell calling plays for them now. That's been a huge plus for Williams. He's had two straight great games with Campbell as his play caller, 19 plus fantasy points, 2 straight games with Campbell in charge. He has touchdowns 3 straight and 4 or 5. He's more than just a deep threat right now. They're finding ways to get Campbell the ball, not just stretching the field, but also over the middle. They're running reverses for him. He's getting all sorts of opportunities. And I think Campbell really likes him and is going to continue to find ways to get him the ball. So I like him for a huge finish to this year. All right, those are 5 of my fantasy takeaways for week 11 of the fantasy season. I hope you had a lot of success this week, came out on the winning side of things. This has been Jeff Paur for Real Time Fantasy Sports.